Hey guys, we are going to review before we begin our reading today. And today we are reading beginning at page 35. And what we've read so far was that Harry was getting all of these letters addressed to him, and they knew that he was under the stairs inside the cupboard, and they knew that he had been moved to a new bedroom, which the letter said the smallest.
And when there was no post on Sunday, 40 letters came for him down the chimney.
Yep, they came down the chimney. You're right. And so that's when Uncle Vernon had enough. And he decided they were going to go somewhere, and he had nailed up the door and everything there, and they still came. And they decided they were going to go somewhere, and that's where we are. We are on page 35. And they're in a hotel, the Riverview Hotel in Cokesworth. Harry made a grab for the letter, but Uncle Vernon knocked his hand out of the way. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better to just go home, dear?" Aunt Petunia suggested timidly hours later, but Uncle Vernon didn't seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove them into the middle of a forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, got back in the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of a ploughed field halfway across a suspension bridge and at the top of a multi-story car park. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he, Dudley?" asked Aunt Petunia dully late that afternoon. Uncle Vernon had parked at the coast, locked them all inside the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Great drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley sniveled. "It's Monday," he told his mother. "The great Humbleton's on tonight. I want to stay somewhere with a television." Monday. That reminded Harry of something. If it was Monday, and you could usually count on Dudley to know the days of the week because of the television, then tomorrow, Tuesday, was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course his birthdays were never exactly fun. Last year's, the Dursleys had given him a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks. Still, you weren't 11 every day. And actually, we had read that already, so we're just reading what we've already read from here. Uncle Vernon was back, and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he'd brought. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a large rock way out to sea. Perched on top of the rock was the most miserable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain, there was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Vernon gleefully, clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." Where do you think they're going?
The sea or the lake.
What do you think?
Maybe that makes no sense. If a big old rock is in the middle of a lake, and who would put a house on it?
So someone put a house there. Maybe that's where they're going.
Yeah,
A toothless old man came ambling up to them, pointing with a rather wicked grin at an old rowing boat bobbing in the iron gray water below them. "I've already got us some rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat. Chloe, what are you doing? Icy sea spray and rain crept down their necks, and a chilly wind whipped their faces. After what seemed like hours, they reached the rock, where Uncle Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to the broken-down house.
Oh.
The inside was horrible. It smelled strangely of seaweed. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden walls, and the fireplace was damp and empty. There were only 2 rooms. And there's Uncle Vernon rowing the boat to get to a little tiny shack on top of the rock.
Who would want to live in that?
Chloe.
Right?
Chloe says she's taking over where the book goes. It's not going to get you. Come on.
She's
Uncle
scared of
Vernon's
everything.
rations turned out to be a packet of crisps each and 4 bananas. He tried to start a fire, but his empty crisp packets just smoked and shriveled up. Could do with some of these letters now, huh? He said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood, obviously. He thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm to deliver post. Harry privately agreed, though the thought didn't cheer him up at all. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Spray from the high waves splattered the walls of the hut, and a fierce wind rattled the filthy windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa.
Ew.
She and Uncle Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could, and to curl up under the thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm raged more and more furiously as the night went on. Harry couldn't sleep. He shivered and turned over, trying to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The lighted dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist, told Harry he'd be 11 in 10 minutes' time. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer, wondering if the Dursleys would remember at all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go, Harry heard something crack outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall in, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Private Drive would be so full of letters when they got back that he'd be able to steal some somehow. 3 minutes to go. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes to go. What was that funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea?
No, maybe.
1 minute to go. And he'd be 11. 30 seconds? 20? 10? 9? Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shriveled, and Harry sat up bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside knocking to come in.
Oh, no.
And that's where it starts. Chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. And who do we see here?
An old guy.
An old guy. He looks like a giant.
Way back at the beginning of the story, we saw a giant.
Mm-hmm. You're right. He was driving the motorcycle. Do you remember his name?
No, I don't.
His name's Hagrid.
Oh, yeah.
Hagrid is the one who brought Harry to the Dursleys. You're right.
He looks older.
Yep, he's older now because he's 11. It's 11 years later.
Oh.
Right?
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap. Chapter 4, The Keeper of the Keys. All right, let's listen. Boom! They knocked again. Dudley jerked awake. "Where's the cannon?" he said stupidly. There was a crash behind them, and Uncle Vernon came skidding into the room. He was holding a rifle in his hands. Now they knew what had been in the long, thin package he had brought with them. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I warn you, I'm armed." There was a pause, then smash. The door was hit with such force that it swung clean off its hinges and with a deafening crash landed flat on the floor. A giant of a man was standing in the doorway. His face was almost completely hidden by a long, shaggy mane of hair and a wild, tangled beard. But you could make out his eyes, glinting like black beetles under all the hair. The giant squished his way into the hut, stopping so that his head just brushed the ceiling. Go pick it up and put it where it belongs, please. He bent down, picked up the door, and fitted it easily back into its frame. The noise of the storm outside dropped a little. He turned to look at them all. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." He strode over to the sofa where Dudley sat frozen with fear. "Budge up, you great lump," said the stranger. Dudley squeaked and ran to hide behind his mother, who was crouching, terrified, behind Uncle Vernon. "Ah, here's Harry," said the giant. Harry looked up into the fierce, wild, shadowy face and saw that the beetle eyes were crinkled in a smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," said the giant. "You look a lot like your dad, but you got your mum's eyes." Uncle Vernon made a funny rasping noise. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," he said. "You are breaking and entering." "Ah, shut up, Dursley, you great prune," said the giant. He reached over the back of the sofa, jerked the gun out of Uncle Vernon's hand, bent it into a knot so easily as if it had been made of rubber, and threw it into a corner of the room. Uncle Vernon made another funny noise, like a mouse being trodden on. "Anyway," Harry said, the giant turning his back on the Dursleys, "a very happy birthday to you. Got something for you here. I might have sat on it at some point, but it'll taste all right." Oh. So the giant knows it's Harry's what?
Birthday.
He does.
Maybe.
There is a picture of Hagrid and Harry sitting by the fire.
Maybe he knew his mom and dad.
Right. And y'all laughed at Shut Up. Are you allowed to say that? No. No. So it may be funny, but we don't talk that way because it's what? Rude. It is rude. From an inside pocket of his black overcoat, he pulled a slightly squished box. Harry opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a large, sticky chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Harry" written on it in green icing. Harry looked up at the giant. He meant to say thank you, but the words got lost on the way to his mouth, and what he said instead was, "Who are you?" The giant chuckled. "True, I haven't introduced myself.
Who are you then?"
"Rebus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts." He held out an enormous hand and shook Harry's whole arm. "What about that tea, he said, rubbing his hands together. "I do not say no ter something stronger if you got it, mind." His eyes fell on the empty grate with the shriveled, crisp packets in it, and he snorted. He bent down over the fireplace. They couldn't see what he was doing, but when he drew back a second later, there was a roaring fire there. It filled the whole damp hut with flickering light, and Harry felt the warmth wash over him, as though he'd sunk into a hot bath. The giant sat back down on the sofa, which sagged under his weight, and began taking all sorts of things out of his pockets of his coat. A copper kettle, a squishy package of sausages, a poker, a teapot, several chipped mugs, and a bottle of some amber liquid, which he took a swig from before starting to make tea. Soon the hut was full of the sound and smell of sizzling sausages. Nobody said a thing while the giant was working, but as he slid the first 6 fat, juicy, slightly burnt sausages from the poker, Dudley fidgeted a little. Uncle Vernon said sharply, "Don't touch anything he gives you, Dudley." The giant chuckled darkly. "Your great poundin' of a son done need fattening any more, Dursley. Don't worry." He passed the sausage to Harry, who was so hungry he had never tasted anything so wonderful, but he still couldn't take his eyes off the giant. Finally, as nobody seemed about to explain anything, he said, "I'm sorry, but I still don't really know who you are." The giant took a gulp of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Call me Hagrid," he said. "Everyone does. And like I told you, I'm keeper of keys at Hogwarts. You'll know all about Hogwarts, of course." No," said Harry. Hagrid looked shocked. "Sorry," said Harry quickly. "Sorry," barked Hagrid, turning to stare at the Dursleys, who shrank back into the shadows. "It's them as should be sorry. I knew you weren't getting your letters, but I never thought you wouldn't even know about Hogwarts, for crying out loud. Did you never wonder where your parents learnt it all?" "All what?" asked Harry.
"All what?"
"All what?" Hagrid thundered. "Now wait just 1 second. What do you think everything is that their parents knew?" Go ahead and tell your shoulder partner.
The mom's sister. Maybe.
Maybe something with the mom's sister. What do you think? The mom's brother? Okay. Remember, the mom's sister was Harry's mom, right? Oh, what? Hagrid thundered. Now, wait just 1 second. He had leaped to his feet. In his anger, he seemed to fill the whole hut. The Dursleys were cowering against the wall. "Do you mean to tell me," he growled at the Dursleys, "that this boy knows nothing about anything?" Harry thought this was going a bit far. He had been to school, after all, and his marks weren't bad. "I know some things," he said. "I can, do math and stuff." But Hagrid simply waved his hand and said, "About our world. I mean, your world.
Yeah.
My world. Your parents' world." "What world?" Hagrid looked as if he was about to explode. "Dursley!" he boomed. Uncle Vernon, who had gone very pale, whispered something that sounded like "Wimble womble." Hagrid stared wildly at Harry. "But you must know about your mom and dad," he said. "I mean, they're famous. You're famous." "What? My mom and dad weren't famous. Were they? You don't know. You don't know?" Hagrid ran his fingers through his hair, fixing Harry with a bewildering stare. "You don't know what you are?" he said finally. Uncle Vernon suddenly found his voice. "Stop," he commanded. "Stop right there, sir. I forbid you to tell the boy anything." A braver man than Vernon Dursley would have quailed under the furious look Hagrid now gave him. When Hagrid spoke, his every syllable trembled with rage. Gabriel, please stop. He never told him what was in the letter Dumbledore left for him. I was there. I saw Dumbledore leave it, Dursley, and you've kept it from him all these years? "Kept what from me?" said Harry eagerly. "Stop! I forbid you!" yelled Uncle Vernon in panic. Aunt Petunia gave a gasp of horror. "Ah, go boil your heads, both of you," said Hagrid. "Harry, you're a wizard." There was silence inside the hut. Only the sea and the whistling wind could be heard. "I'm a what?" gasped Harry. "A wizard, of course," said Hagrid, sitting back down on the sofa, which groaned and sank even lower. "And a triumphant good un, I'd say, once you've been trained up a bit. With a mom and a dad like yours, what else would you be? And I reckon it's about time you read your letter." And we're going to stop there, and we read through page 42.
I can't wait to see what the letter's going to say.
I know. And there's a picture
Probably
of the owl.
Something crazy and funny.
Something crazy and funny. I think it's something important because
he
has been trying really hard to get to him.
It might have something